So for more, let's go to our esteemed legal panel, News Nation legal contributor Jesse Weber and host of the Law and Crime Network, and trial attorney and legal analyst Misty Marris. I'm biased. I have worked with both of you for years, so topic aside, I am giddy that you're both with me. Not so good news is this trial. And I want to start with the defense, so I'm going to start with Misty here.
It's okay. I'd rather take the prosecution.
Okay, I figured. I sort of know you, so I figured. Bought the gun, improperly stored the gun. Is that enough to say you're guilty?
Elizabeth, we've covered so many cases together, and this one is certainly difficult to go through the facts of this case. So for the defense perspective, as much as this is a much more difficult case for the defendant than Jennifer Crumbley's, there were a couple of victories today in court. So certain text messages, remember those messages between Jennifer and Ethan while she was at the horse farm and Ethan was saying that he was in mental distress? Those were deemed inadmissible. James Crumbley was not on those messages. Also deemed inadmissible, a text from Ethan to a friend that says he's going to do something bad. So those messages are out. The defense is going to focus on what James Crumbley knew about his son's condition. That's going to be the primary defense here. They're going to say that he was not aware that Ethan was a threat. Tough case. The other piece of this, they're going to talk about whether or not there was access to that gun, which this is why the case is tough for the defense. James Crumbley is responsible for the maintenance storage. He's the purchaser.
You just teed up Jesse right there.
You did. And look, I mean, the reason this case is worse for him is he was the one who actually purchased the weapon.
Right.
He did not put the cable lock on the weapon. It was never even taken out of the packaging. So as much as the defense will say, well, he didn't know his son knew where the gun was, that might be a flimsy argument. I think where it really was a slam dunk for the prosecution today and where you go forward in this case is what happened on the day of the shooting, right? So we know both parents were called to the school when they were alerted about these very disturbing drawings that Ethan had written. And one of the excuses that James Crumbley had why he didn't take his son out was he had to work. But he was an Uber driver. He could set his own schedule, and he didn't even necessarily go to work afterwards. He might have went to go check out the horses. So it's a little bit of kind of, he knew that was an opportunity to take his son out, and he had been researching mental health facilities right after that meeting, but never called any of them. So if it's a question of, did he have the reasonable basis to know his son was in danger, that's going to be really, really hard to get past.
You brought up some text messages. Mm-hmm. There was text messages where he was responding to Jennifer, oh, it's just ignore it. But does that show that he's not really paying attention to his son? So there's negligence there. I guess that would be a prosecution question.
Well, I actually think that text message helps the defense because he said he's fine. He's fine. Now, that could be a parent in denial, or that could be a parent who's ignoring the warning signs, which would necessarily make him culpable.
Yeah, that meeting at the school and then nobody taking action, that was really a point for the prosecution in the Jennifer Crumbley trial. But keep in mind, the defense has the blueprint now of what happened during the Jennifer Crumbley trial. We know a lot of the evidence is going to overlap. So presumably they're going to take that, they're going to break that down and try and find some of those vulnerabilities and focus the case from the defense perspective on that. One question, will he testify? A lot of people said Jennifer didn't do herself any favors, so that will be a question for after the prosecution completes their case, but I'm sure it's something they're grappling with. I don't know if that back and forth, the text messages, will be as relevant for him to get on the stand and explain all of that as it was for Jennifer, so he may just make the prosecution prove it.
And by the way, you remember one of the jurors came out after the Jennifer Crumbley case and said one of the deciding factors was they believed she was the last one to have access to the gun because they went to a shooting range before. So if you take a jury, obviously different jury here, but if you think about who had access to the gun, whose responsibility was the gun, it always to me seemed like it was more James than Jennifer, and I think that's going to be a key component.
Well, that tees up my next question, and I want both of you to respond. There was a lot of finger pointing from Jennifer. You know, James, it was a father-son thing. It was not, I wasn't a part of it. It wasn't me. So flip the script now. Are we going to see well, she was already found guilty, so I'm not guilty.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see is more of an argument. He had these conversations with his mother about mental health issues. I wasn't a party to it. She didn't share everything with me. Jesse brings up a good point. That timeline of who had the gun last and who had access last. She said she left it in the backseat of her car, and then she didn't know when her husband came and took it and put it away. She had no knowledge of how it actually ended up back in that house. So will he have a different version of those events? No one was really able to answer that timeline. Something I think is interesting in this case that differs from Jennifer Crumbley, we're going to hear from a witness of who James Crumbley bought the gun from, the original owner of the gun, to testify about the condition of the gun and that lock and the condition of that lock. Will there be something in there? Well, there was an issue with the functioning of the lock, that he didn't put it on because it wasn't working. Maybe we could see something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and really quick, I don't see. Look, Jennifer Crumbley had to point the finger at James Crumbley. There was opportunity for do that. I don't think it works here. I think there were parents in this together. He was more involved with the gun, which is what we're talking about here, and he can't just turn a blind eye. Look, he'll be able to put on a case. I don't know if he's going to testify. I don't know if it'll do him any favors. I didn't think Jennifer Crumbley testifying really hurt her. I really thought that she, for me, I was sitting there watching it, gave me pause, gave me a second to think. I was 100%.
To hear that.
So I actually didn't think she did a bad job. Obviously, you could play Monday morning quarterback, say it didn't help her. I don't know. I haven't heard James Crumbley speak that much. He will have to explain. I mean, one of the worst things, the 911 phone call that he placed, after he didn't find the gun, he immediately thought his son was the shooter. That, again, goes to that knowledge component. If he immediately thought his son was the shooter, you might have known something was
off. I got that vibe from Jennifer, too. And I want to, we're getting wrapped here. So as a defense, as the prosecution, do you want him? Do you want to hear from him?
You know, I don't know if it's necessary, but I will say that there's some video here. Jennifer Crumbley got a lot of criticism for being aloof. And there's a video of him while Ethan is being interrogated. You know, he's at the police station, and he's saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Will that be enough to maybe overcome some of what was to Jennifer Crumbley's detriment regarding her attitude?
I'm the prosecution? Absolutely. Why? Because I have to put him in the hot seat and say, why did you text your son or allegedly text your son, suck it up, and just give him some pills when he's talking about his mental health problems? I think that's going to be tough for him to answer. It's a prosecutor's dream to have an opportunity to question a defendant.
Well, and it's our dream to follow it, so we'll continue to follow it. So, Jesse and Misty, thank you so much.
Good seeing you.
Great talking to you guys.
Of course.